In the Church of Christ, we teach that the Bible teaches that we can intermarry, and therefore we will intermingle. We'll also have a very diverse future.
When I first heard about the Church of Christ and what they were teaching, they made me believe that they were actually teaching the truth. And if you're teaching the truth, there should not be an issue with black or white. So I decided to visit here, and that's when I realized that they are teaching the truth, and black or white, regardless of what your nationality is not an issue.
Visit the Martinsville Church of Christ. Services 11 a.m. on Sunday, 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Watch them on TV Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on Comcast Channel 18 and Sunday night on WGSR at 9 p.m.
Thanks for being with me today, and I have up that I'm on a Wednesday broadcast, and in fact I am actually on a Tuesday broadcast, so I hope you don't mind that. We're picking up on our Genesis, and I would like to say in the intro this morning that we are really involved in a lot of activity that is consuming a lot of our time, and so I apologize for last week. I don't remember exactly. We had a fine show down here last Tuesday, and then I believe is that correct, Jonathan? Yeah. We actually had our broadcast go well here on Tuesday, and I was trying to go ahead and get 2 days in a row, and we had some problems in Martinsville. And so just as a heads up, Caleb will be doing a broadcast tomorrow. He's basically beginning a study that I think you'll enjoy. It's going to be a life of Christ travels, and he will be mixing geography into a series of lessons, a methodology that he's going to use to try to help individuals realize how important geography really is, and that if you're going to get to know this information, then you need to realize that there is a huge amount of geography, and these points are relevant. Today I'll be talking about Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is actually going to be the mountain where Jerusalem is situated, but it wasn't for several hundred years, and it is mentioned in today's lesson. And so we're very glad to have you with us on our school version of What Does the Bible Say? And this morning we're going to begin in Genesis 21. We actually are going to be dealing with we're going to pick up, I know I need to do an intro, and I hate that we have to come back and forth, that we just don't do like a regular school, and we're not able to go, every week be together, and we have different things that interrupt us. And so this morning I was actually in this same section last week. We were talking about Abraham, and we covered an entire block of Abraham's life from Genesis 12 to Genesis 22. And we watched every facet of Abraham's behaviors last week. We had a look at several different things that happened to him, and the bringing in of his first child, the bringing in of his second child, the difficulties associated with that, and the pains and the difficulty that Sarah and Abraham went through, that Lot went through, that Hagar went through. And one of the points that we made was right here in this particular section, and we demonstrated that Abraham had a lot of trouble with his children, in regard to his children. Now, I'm not saying that he had trouble with his children and their behavior. I'm saying with regard to. Being a parent, being a father, is a very difficult thing, and Abraham being the father of the faithful, that's one of the things that we continue to present, keep in front of you, is that he is actually holding a special place in biblical lore, and so we need to keep that in our mind as well when we're talking about him. And so Romans chapter 4, verse 13, for the promise that he should be heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. He is the heir of the world. And in verse 12, the father of circumcision and to the uncircumcision, and he is the father of us all. So we basically are being taught that what we learn from Abraham is going to be like we're learning from the father of all faithful people for all time. Now, there are other individuals who are examples. Noah is an example. Abel is an example. Enoch is an example. I mean, we could just go through and continue down that line. Moses, or Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses, and Sarah. They're all examples. And there are so many things to learn. And so, as we are dealing with this, we're trying to keep this in the forefront of your mind. And so I'm going to begin in Genesis 21. Abraham has his child now through his wife Sarah. And we have Ishmael through Hagar. And as we said, this was something we talked about last week. This is weaning time, and Abraham was 100 years old, and his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear me will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Now, this is a point that we need to have position in our mind this morning. And a lot of times, now last week we actually talked about the fact that this word mock is used in another instance regarding Isaac and his wife Rebekah when they got themselves in a similar situation that Abraham and Sarah were in twice, and that is when a king into whose land they had traveled thought that they were brother and sister, and the king ends up taking Sarah twice. And in Isaac's particular case, Isaac goes back and marries from his kinfolk, and so he is very closely related to Rebekah as well. And the king takes her, and he sees them, the Bible says, sporting. And so we take from that term that something was going on that would demonstrate to the king or to the persons who were watching that there is a relationship or something of a nature that creates in him an awareness that he's messed up. And so Paul says this about the situation. In Galatians 4:29, but as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the Spirit, even so it is now. Now, in this particular instance, Paul is actually making a point and bringing in front of them that God had this situation be an allegory. It is going to be something from which a lesson can be drawn from several of the points, similarities of the points that are in that family story. Well, if you don't know that account, then it's not going to make any sense to you at all. But since we do know this particular account, we know that whatever was taking place, it wasn't something just to be overlooked. And so I don't know if it was something to deal with to this degree, but I'm not God, and so I don't have anything really to say about it other than the event happened. But as it transpires, this is what we want to key in on this morning. Wherefore she said unto him, to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. Now, folks, as we're looking at Abraham, what I'm trying to present early in this lesson this morning is that we need to have it in our minds that what is playing out in front of us is life. And we have emphasized, and I will continue to emphasize this, where are you going to get your information to manage your life? Are you getting it from some sitcom? Now, I used old-time sitcoms the other day, and I date myself. You may be watching, I have no idea what individuals are watching. I think that there are a lot of people in the last 6-8 years that have been Walking Dead followers. And you might say, well, why would you bring that up? Listen, folks, From what I get, I don't watch the show, never did watch the show, but from what I get, it is a tutorial in prepping. What do you mean prepping? Well, you notice that things are pretty crazy these days. It is 2020. If you don't have your eyes open right now, you'll never have them open. 2020, kind of odd that we're having this kind of year. You might actually say to people, you need to wake up if you're ever going to, and you need to realize it's 2020. And you don't need to be having hindsight later and saying, wow, I didn't know what's going on. Yeah, 2020, wake up. What am I saying? Your vision. You ought to be awake and your eyes ought to be open and you ought to be paying attention. Well, what's going on? If you don't know what's going on, guess what? You're probably going to be caught by surprise. Now, I don't want to use The Walking Dead as my go-to for how I behave. I'm not saying anything about folk that are prepping. You do what you do, but I'm saying the thing is, I want to make sure that we're all tuned in to this is life. And these people were dealing with the same kind of thing. They had marauding individuals. We talked about Abraham's nephew, Lot, being taken off to Damascus. Abraham has to go up and fight a full-out battle and bring all of them back and bring all the stuff back. He brings Lot back. He brings their goods back. And so they had that kind of scene going on as well. They had famine. They had times where they were destitute and they found themselves in foreign countries like Egypt and the Philistines' land of Gerar. So if you're going to get a tutorial on how to behave yourself and how to prepare yourself, this is the real deal. Now, Walking Dead came from Hollywood, and it is possible that they put a lot of thought into trying to make that realistic in the sense of what it would be like to be handling yourself on the run without all of the staples that we usually have. And I'm not talking about putting a staple in a piece of paper. I'm talking about all of the things that we normally have at our disposal. And here we are today, and we don't have all the things at our normal disposal. But what I am saying is what you think in your head is what's going to matter when it comes to those decisions that are most important. And that is the way you're going to act, the way you're going to treat people, the way you're going to look at the possibility of whether or not you're going to survive. Now, individuals who don't think they're going to survive and they don't think that there's enough to go around, they start acting in a way that needs to be curbed, and somebody needs to have a cool head. I'm saying this is just basics. This is prepping. This is getting ourselves aware of what's going on and what can happen. 101. Somebody needs to have a cool head, and cool heads need to prevail. Now, I walked in, I have no idea what was being talked about all through the buzz yesterday, but I walked in here to the studio and they were replaying the buzz, and I was hearing defund the police. So, if you're a person who is disturbed, if you're at home and you're watching my show, you're watching, what does the Bible say? School. You're watching Genesis play out, and you're actually not supposed to be thinking this is some ancient document that doesn't have anything to do with today. It has everything to do with today. And it could be today that you're sitting in your home and something is very grievous. It's very probable that you are just grinding away in your head at the way things are. The situation that we're now in. Nothing is normal. Every time you go out to do something, it ends up being a struggle. Guess what? I'm not having difficulty with that. You know why? I lived in a foreign country, a third world country, and guess what? Nothing is ever how you plan. When you're trying to learn a new culture, a lot of people go home in the first 6-8 months. And I was told that. I was thankful that a missionary told me, Johnny, in that first 6-8 months, when you just decide that you hate this place, and you think the people hate you, and you think that it's mutual, because you just can't ever seem to have a good day because something always goes wrong. He said, remember what I told you. You're having culture shock. And just give it some time, and before you know it, you will actually be used to the new normal. Are you getting used to the new normal? Well, guess what? There may never be a normal again, but I'll tell you this. This will help you. What's going on here? Here's an individual who has 2 separate families going on that he's involved with. Lot is out of the picture, basically. He's not yet out of the picture, but he's going to be. He's down in Sodom and Gomorrah. And after Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed in Genesis 19, which we're not going to discuss today, we already went through that. The goodness of God saving Lot and his children, trying to save his wife, but she looked back. This is two families that he's actually dealing with, a son from one wife, a concubine, and a son from his beloved wife Sarah, and the son of promise. And it's very grievous because the son is being cast out, and God actually addresses it, and he tells Abraham this is basically something that's going to be fine. And I knew that animation was going to give me trouble today. Let's see what I did wrong. You just have to bear with me. I know that one. This one is not animated. And for some reason, that one's not animated, and I'm not sure that they're going to come in the right time frame. So let's try this and see what happens. I hope we don't have to go through the whole broadcast that way. Okay, now, sorry about that. It grieved Abraham, and now we're looking at Hagar. Hagar went out and sat her down over against. She went and sat her down over against him a good way off. Now, we're basically seeing what Hagar is doing when she's cast out. And she and Ishmael are cast out, as it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice, and she wept. You know, folks, life can be tough. And you need to realize, I know that. I spend a lot of time with individuals that are having difficult times. We have brethren that are going through difficult times right now. We're praying for the McMinnis family, and I talk with just loads of individuals on my phone about difficulties that they're having, and it's just amazing when you start thinking about it. I'm basically the individual that many people call because their preacher doesn't pick up his phone unless he's in the office. And I saw a video that was played about me yesterday, and the video talked about me. It basically, you heard my voice saying that individuals often call me and they don't want anything, they just want someone to listen. And I'm talking to them at all hours of the night, and I ended up saying, and I don't regret saying this, they were talking to me about things that their no good preacher should have picked up his phone and listened to, or the elders that don't generally ever hear anybody's problems because they go to the preacher. And you may ask, why do they go to the preacher? Because the preacher is paid to take those calls, is what the elders say. That is ridiculous. Shepherds actually should love their sheep, and the shepherds should be the ones that are talking to the sheep, and the preacher, who is an evangelist, whether he wants to be or not, that is what you're there for, is to evangelize. And so he ends up being the one that does field their calls, and the reason he fields their calls is because he's paid, and he doesn't generally have his phone going so that people can get to him. There are a few preachers in the brotherhood that do, but I call all over this brotherhood because people call me from everywhere wanting Bible studies, and I hardly ever get a preacher that will answer his phone, and I never, hardly ever have a cell phone number for these guys, nor do they publish it. And so I'm saying people have problems, and that's what we're doing here. Look at this. You have actually been put out of your own dwelling, and you don't know what you're going to do. And she is at the point where she is out of food and water. She thinks that Ishmael is going to die. She puts him over to a certain area, and then she lifts up her voice, and she wept. You know, I told a lady last week, as I say, I have a chance to talk to a lot of people. I told a lady, a mother, that there is an extra place that I'm actually in charge of that she can stay if she continues to have trouble. And it be basically something that can be done for her because I know the condition that she's in. We are not often in the church. We're not often involved in people's lives. I know that Caleb and Joey spent a couple of hours with one of our sisters last night. It is just a constant thing of ministering to people. And why? Because you hear them weep. Maybe they're not physically weeping, but you know that inside, emotionally, people are distraught about a lot of things, very serious things. And so it's the case this morning that we are talking about this very thing. What's going to be done? What's going to be done about Hagar? I mean, we're listening to the fact that Abraham is hearing Sarah say, cast this bondwoman out. The child is being persecuted. The child is being mocked. Ishmael is doing something to the child that's just been weaning age. I don't know what weaning age back there is. I know in third world countries, sometimes it's 3 and 4. And so you might say, that's preposterous. Well, it's because you don't live anywhere but the United States and you don't know what goes on in other countries. And so I do not know what the weaning age is in this particular instance, but I do know that the age difference is vast here, and Ishmael shouldn't have been doing whatever it was that he was doing. And so now it's caused friction, and she's found herself homeless and to the point of destitution. And what is God going to do? You see, that's what we're talking about, because is that not what we're trying to do? This is, you might be saying, Johnny, this ain't helping my faith. Listen, this is exactly what your faith needs, because God sees this. And you might say, well, how do you know, Johnny? Genesis 16:6. But Abraham said unto Sarah, behold, the maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleases thee. And when Sarah dealt hardily with her, she fled from her face. Did you see what we just did? We went from Genesis 21 back to Genesis 16. This is not the first time. When Hagar was pregnant with Ishmael, because Sarah's plan worked, which was, I can't seem to have a child, take my handmaiden Hagar, and it may be that she conceives. Well, she did conceive, and when she conceived, when she was pregnant, she despised Sarah. In other words, the word despise, if you look up the Bible word despise, it means to think less of. Now, we usually cross up despise with just flat out hatred or like some serious dislike. It can simply mean less esteem, where Hagar was looking at Sarah in a service manner. Instead, she now is looking at her as, I'm your equal because I'm bearing our husband a child. So to say that she despised her doesn't necessarily mean anything particularly bad. But Sarah sees it. She can't stand it. And she says to the pregnant woman, I do not want her around. She dealt hardly with her. If you don't have a Bible program, we offer Bible programs for laptops, PCs. We don't have them for Macintosh, Apple products, but the one that I have, you can basically look at that word, and all you have to do is just click the interlinear, and boom, you're there. You can see that this is like stripes. It could be that she was treating her very bad and she fled from her face. So what we're saying is this is not the first time this is happening. Well, what kind of life is this? Well, in Genesis 16, 10 through 12, and we're going to read that today, Genesis 16, let's see what that was, 16, 10 through 12. We're going to notice the context and let you see exactly what does take place and why we're giving such a good plug to God. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, and it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shall bear a son, thou shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. Now, he will be a wild man, his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand will be against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then look at verse 13. And she called the name of the Lord that spoke unto her, Thou God seest me, for she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Now, they named the well Bir Lahoria as a result of this wording. God seeth me. So we're saying in this particular instance, that's what's happening. Thou, God, seest me. Now, folks, you need to realize during this time frame, God sees you. He knows what's going on with you. Now, folks, I don't know. I know that a lot of you that watch our program, watch us here on TV, you might have an inkling that I'm having a hard time, that I'm having some issues that are coming out on television, that I'm having to deal with these people here and deal with these people here, and a lot of harping and chirping and individuals flat out nipping at me. And you might be thinking, Johnny, you're probably not doing very well. Listen, I am doing very well, thank you. You know why? Because I'm studying Genesis. Thou, God, seest me. Well, what are we looking at? We're looking at Hagar, who doesn't seem to be having it very good. I beg to differ. Life is filled with these kinds of events, and the problem that we have is that we don't actually realize that God is watching this, and we don't realize that God's plans work out if we will stay the course. And if we act correctly. Now, if we start doing things like, for instance, like Sarah, and trying to have a baby through Hagar, this kind of behavior is what creates the conflict and the difficulty. If we can learn from these kinds of things and trust God long term and not do these physical things that end up messing us up, creating more difficult circumstances, more difficulties, then we're going to be doing good. That's the whole point of all of this. Now, here's my thing. One week we were actually discussing a passage, and we said that you could actually read this in 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And I was telling you Abraham was 86 years old, and then I had in parentheses 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And I know somebody's trying to think, well, how in the world did Johnny come up with he was 86 years old, 2 minutes and 7 seconds? And I told you, you could read through this passage, and it was actually this passage right here, in 2 minutes. But you won't get anything out of it that way. And here we are going back over it. Now, I use a phrase, and I think it's actually a very good ideology. It comes from a movie called Karate Kid that my kids watched when they were very young. We were living overseas. Somebody sent it, I suppose. And the Chinese gentleman, probably Japanese, I do believe, that was mentoring this boy, he was training him in martial arts, and he had him waxing his car. And the boy became very frustrated because he would put the wax on, and then the dude would tell him, now take the wax off, and he would do it again, and then the car looked good. He brought another car, and he did it again, and he's like, when is this going to end? And then when they actually started the training, wax on was actually the moves that the man had been trying to get him to learn naturally, like they become second nature. Wax on, wax off. And as a result of this boy doing all of that waxing, he was now naturally inclined to be able to handle these blows that were coming at him. Now, when you put one layer on and then you take it off and then you do it again, you are actually getting experience. At different times you have to go through layers. Let's just say that you're painting. Anybody who has seen a person painting a car, they know the more coats that you put on, the more shine and the more expensive it's going to end up being. Well, so, sometimes when you're painting, you can paint like this wall is actually not what you think it is. It has a particular paint on it that makes my program come up. When you're painting, sometimes you have to go over it 2 or 3 times in order to get the view that you want, the look that you want. It's the same thing here. You read this stuff fast, speed reading, while you're fixing to go to sleep at night, it's not doing you any good. What we're actually seeing right now is that this is 16, we were in 21, and both of these instances are harrowing, scary, destitute individuals. And she really didn't do this to herself. This is actually the doing of Sarah, and it is in God's plan, and God's going to take care of her. And she finds it out, and she's saying, God sees me. And we need to recognize as well, God is seeing us. Whatever you're going through, I'm about to help you with more information. Here's what we need to realize. She basically in 21, it was grievous to Abraham. She's weeping now because she has run out of sustenance. The child she thinks is going to die, and she lifted up her voice and she wept. But here's what she didn't see. Genesis 21:18. Arise. The angel appears again. Lift up the lad and hold him in the hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad a drink. You know, this morning, I've been having a discussion with a preacher friend of mine, and he blocked me right before I came on television. And he had just previously told me that he was trying to help me. He began asking questions about things that are going on in the Martinsville Church of Christ, and I said, I don't have any answers for you. I don't really need coaching from individuals outside. And he was telling me that he actually was trying to get information to try to help me because he knew that I was going to have trouble as regarding my funds. And I'm thinking, okay, he says that he's going to help me. But yesterday, he was going to help me. These current posts, he's trying to tell me he's going to help me, and I'm telling him I don't need any coaching. And so then he just basically says several things, and then he blocks me. Well, the reason why we were having that discussion in the first place is because he posted on my Facebook wall, and I don't really intend to show you the post. It may be the post that comes up, but nevertheless, here's the post that I was getting. This was a letter that was written to me from individuals in New Hampshire who came to the tent. And they're wanting us to know how much they enjoyed the tent, and they're also wanting to tell other people what a great time we had. And so we had other individuals from Maryland and from LA that actually live here. The person from LA lives here. The person from Maryland, they were at the tent meeting and they were saying, yes, it was great. My grandson's saying great. One of the sisters, Jackie, is saying it was great. Mark McMinnis, he's given an emoji, and then one of the sisters says again, absolutely to what Mark says. And then this other brother from out of here, he chimes in that he's been to a tent and it was great. And then he starts criticizing our actions associated with discipline in the Martinsville Church of Christ on a post where everybody is responding to the recommendation that you come to one of our tents and the high praise and regard that individuals are given for our ability to pull off a tent during Corona, pull off a tent with Caleb and myself doing all the speaking and adding an extra daytime class to the door knocking that goes on daily. And on that post, this friend basically starts taking me to task as if he knows what's going on. And so then he informs me that my support is gone. And I'm like, you really think my support is gone? Whose eyes are we using? And I hope he's watching today because, you know, let me give you a personal instance here, folks. In 1995, I'm just going to ask my phone because I just have to be, I cannot even be optimistic these days without people saying that I'm lying when I'm being optimistic or I'm being, it's like overly optimistic. When I said that was one of the best tent meetings, I didn't say that. Actually, Tanner said he believed that was one of the best tent meetings that we had ever had. Well, he's 18. I don't know how long he can remember, but we've had tent meetings that they exceeded that one in some degrees, in that one of them was a month long. So I'm going to ask, the distance between Danville, Virginia and Majuro, Marshall Islands.
The distance from Danville to Marshall Islands International Airport is 6,972 miles.
Now, do you mind if I just say 7,000 miles? I was 7,000 miles away from home, and I got into friction with the individuals back home that were receiving my funds that 48 different churches throughout the United States were sending to me. Now, one of the congregations is the congregation this guy is actually in, who is telling me the future of my funds. And so these 48 churches that are sending me funds, some of them are sending me $50, some people are sending me $25. Basically, they have committed for 5 years of me being in the Pacific. And the congregation that was receiving the funds, this is what we do in the Church of Christ. We follow what the Bible says in regard to keeping things honest. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 20, notice this: avoiding this, that no man should blame us in this abundance which is ministered by us, providing for honest things, not only in the sight of the Lord, but also in the sight of all men. Now, what Paul is actually saying here is he's not carrying the money. Some other individuals are actually carrying the money. So I didn't have money sent to my bank account. It was sent to a congregation that was well thought of amongst all of those 48 churches. And I started having friction with the congregation that was receiving the funds. And I came home and I basically told them, I'm done with y'all. And they said the same thing. Well, you'll never get another check. And I said then what I'm saying to this guy now. You are not in control, and you are not seeing through the eyes that I see through. Not only did I get another check, every one of those congregations, with the exception of 4, actually picked all the funds up and sent it somewhere else. And I went right on back to work in the Pacific. Now, you might be saying, well, Johnny, I never heard that. Well, you know why? Because I didn't make a fuss about it. I didn't send letters all over the brotherhood and tell people how badly I was being treated and make out like I was some victim and try to get even and be vengeful and try to tear everybody down. And so literally, you actually came home and re-raised all your funds. Yes. And I asked my mother-in-law the other day, because we're thinking about reminding ourselves of that time so that we get through this time. I asked my mother-in-law, how long did Lori stay over there, my wife, and baby Caleb? How long did they stay over there in the Marshall Islands by themselves while Micah and Che were enrolled in a Texas school? And I traveled all over the United States raising those funds again, or talking to those congregations and telling them, I want to go back, I want to use another congregation. She was there from August to October, into October, in a third world country by herself. Well, what in the world? How did she make it? Look, arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I'll make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad to drink. Do you not realize, folks, if you're looking through the eyes of faith, you will find the well. God has plenty of resources. The question is, am I going to give up? Do you give up? And you might say, well, I had one gentleman in Martinsville said that when I tell stuff like this, personal testimony. Listen, telling the truth about what takes place is not personal testimony. I do not know anything about what goes on behind the scenes. And if you haven't been able to see things like this happen, it's probably because you don't have the faith to actually step out and experience this kind of thing. And that's where a lot of people are. A lot of people don't like God. They're upset and they're grumbling and they're complaining. Why? I don't know why. I know that I sometimes am weak and I murmur, but it's not my character. It's not characteristic of me. People who know me characteristically say Johnny is the eternal optimist. Why? Because I should be. I'm following in the steps of Abraham. I'm trying to be able to see what it is that he went through and what Hagar went through. So you see what we're saying? Oh, no, you don't see what we're saying yet. We just started this. Look at the things that are coming up. Genesis 21:22. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech, the chief captain of the host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou dost. Now, we just saw Hagar actually be delivered, and you just read that she was told that her son was also going to be a great nation. And if we had read the rest of that, they went down to Egypt, and he married, and we all know the Ishmaelites are in the Bible, and they are, by most accounts, talked about as the Arab countries. that they are his descendants. Now, let's look at Abraham. We're moved right from her then to Abraham. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of the host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. What's this? This is Abraham in his older age, and this is the king. This is actually the king that had taken Sarah on another occasion when they were in that situation where they went down into the Philistines' land in Gerar, actually chapter 20, and the things that happened associated with that. He was announced by God or by an angel to be a prophet, and you've stolen another man's wife. So now we're in 21, and we're getting a recap of that. Are we getting the results of that? This king actually comes up with his chief captain, and he says to Abraham, you know what? I recognize that God is with thee in all that you're doing. And he sets forth covenants with Abraham. We won't be bothering your wells. Our people are going to get along because we recognize this. Genesis 23, verse 6. Now here is Abraham. Now what am I building at? I'm talking about seeing through the eyes that you need to be seeing through. Abraham is getting all the things that were said about him. I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse them that curse thee. Well, the Philistines are sure enough wanting to be blessed, and they're wanting to be in league, or at least they're wanting to be on the good side of Abraham. Same thing with Sodom and Gomorrah back in the day, and Melchizedek. All these individuals are blessing and praising Abraham. And Genesis 23, his wife has died. Notice, he's trying to find a place to bury his wife, and notice what the people of Heth say. Hear us, my Lord. Thou art a mighty prince among us. In the choice of our sepulchres bury thy dead. None of us shall withhold from thee his sepulchre, but that thou mayest bury thy dead. So here you have another group of individuals that formally and will continue on in the future being the enemies. I will remind you when we get there how that Rebekah, Isaac's wife, ends up saying, I'm going to go out of my mind if Jacob marries one of the daughters of Heth, and they're actually Hittites. And Esau had already married some, and that's why she was saying that. It was a weariness to her. But right now, look how they're treating Abraham. You know, I don't know what is wrong with me, but I have to look this verse up constantly. And I hope I can get it this morning. Enemies, even your enemies end up being at peace with you. I just don't know why. I can't seem to commit it to memory. Let's see. I'm going to try 39. No. 55? No. Well, trust me, it's in there. Caleb can help me if I'm actually not thinking correctly. I'm going to do one more. I was going to look at enemies, but man, this is how you use this program, by the way, is you have to set the search. I set the search for the book of Psalms, and it keeps doing the same thing to me. I knew that was going to be difficult, so I'm going to try. I know it's up high. Proverbs 16:7. You know, that's probably one of the reasons I'm not finding it. Thank you. That was New Hampshire. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for watching. Proverbs 16:7. That just really blows my mind because I try to read my Proverbs for the day that it is. 20 was yesterday, and it was very helpful. When a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. Now, you see what we're saying here? This is important. We're actually reading that right now. Here are Abraham's enemies that are being at peace with him. You know, my enemies are being nice to me right now. Now, individuals that are supposed to be my friends, they're coming out of the woodwork. Individuals that have kind of stopped plaguing me and bothering me in the last maybe 5 years, kind of been silent, all of a sudden they think there's blood in the water. Man, they are just like everywhere. Y'all, it just amazes me. And so I am saying, I'm fine. You can be fine too if you actually see the way you're supposed to see. Genesis 20, verse 7. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know that thou art a dead man, that thou shalt surely die. Who is this? Look at this. This is him. This is this individual right here. This particular king, he went through a situation, Abimelech went through a situation where he crossed Abraham and he found out he was crossing God. And so now he's setting in play to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Even your enemies will be at peace with you. It is a great feeling. Now, you might be saying, well, what's the problem you're having now? My friends are what's my problem now. Individuals who claim to be my friends. My enemies are not bugging me. As a matter of fact, I had a nice phone call. And Brian Edwards was never my enemy. He did sue the station, or had the station sued. And I hate that, and that was really against me. He pretended that he was not trying to work me over because it would look bad for Christians to be suing Christians. He's not a Christian, never was a Christian, and I'm still saying he wasn't a Christian. So he could have gone ahead and sued me if he wanted to. He wouldn't have got anything. His lawyer wasn't smart enough to actually do what they wanted to do here. But you have to pay another lawyer to actually deal with dumb lawyers too. So nevertheless, it was a pain. But I'm saying, I had a nice conversation with him the other day, rung him up 2 different times last month, and was able to talk to him. What was I talking to him about? I was talking to him about a mutual acquaintance of the both of ours that is now in trouble, and I want to help him. Well, who is he? He's a Baptist. You want to help a Baptist? Listen, I want to help all of y'all. There's not anybody that I don't care about, that I'm not concerned about. And you folks that are trying to cut my legs out from under me, how do you think I got to where I am right now? It wasn't by being so fragile that you little guys could actually do anything to me, because I am actually trying to trust in God. And some individuals are saying, well, we see your faults. Guess what? Who are we studying here? Are you seeing Sarah's behavior in this? Mistreating a pregnant woman who is your servant? I mean, what in the world? And yet God is taking care of her? Yeah. Why? Because she didn't lose her head. She eventually stayed the course. You see how that's going? So in a reality, if I am actually penitent about my behavior, then are you not actually fighting against God? Oh, I'm not a prophet, but I am following Father Abraham, and it could be that you're just in the process of actually beating that hard head of yours against the wall. Do you see us stopping what we're doing? Let me make a plug. No matter what you do, we have a brother named James Causey, and he paid for the whole year of our daytime school. So no matter what you do, you see that well? You remember that well? She saw a well. Her eyes were open and she saw a well. This daytime TV is going to go. All the stuff that was going on last night and all the foolishness that was going on yesterday on YouTube and the different things with this guy telling me that I'm losing my funds. Are you out of your mind? There are individuals that are paying for whole months, whole years of our broadcast. One individual set it up basically where we can go for the next 4 years if we wanted to use the funds that he made available for TV. Seriously, y'all are wasting your time, and you're actually trying to destroy the opportunity for people that are listening. This lady in New Hampshire, what do you think she would feel like if our broadcast went off? I mean, do you realize? Let's take a look. Just for our individuals who are doing this kind of stuff, I want to take a look at our YouTube, and let's look at our school. And you might say, well, why are we doing this? We're doing this to let you see what it would be like if all of a sudden you did ruin, what does the Bible say? Let's look at a school. One of our school videos, just to see my last class, 599 views. Individuals watching a 2-hour broadcast. A school class. Before that, 882 views. Are you kidding me?
And you got your ring.
Now, you're talking about individuals sitting through 2 hours, and you might say, Johnny, they didn't sit through 2 hours. You don't know. You can't see our analytics page. If they sat for 30 minutes, that's more than they would want to sit and listen to most of the preachers that I hear, because they don't put into it anything that people. You think you can get 500 people to tune into you if you're teaching Genesis? This is an extremely difficult job, and people love it. I love it. Do you not realize this is how I am actually staying the course right now? Is because I am studying the right book. And so, to the brother that helped, that actually is paying for this for the rest of your, God bless you. That well I didn't even know existed. My eyes were open, and there it was. Unbelievable. Genesis 12:2. I will make of thee a great nation, I will bless thee, I will make thy name great, and I will bless them that bless thee. Look at that. That is Abraham being talked to at the beginning when he was called out. Time and adversity. Give time to your adversity, and eventually patience will pay off if you have faith. I just told you what James 1:1-3 actually says. Count it all joy, because you're actually getting yourself built up, and you're being able to see. All right, time spent on what God looked like. Now, I'm really not happy right now with my time. Jonathan, I know that I'm not going to have another hour, and so I'm going to keep it very close, and I may stop right here. Now, you know, I'm about to talk about seeing right quick. I've got 8 minutes. I'm talking about seeing and what people do with a passage. Remember, she was seeing. What was Hagar seeing? And what was Abraham seeing? What are you seeing? Are you able to see what is out there? In Exodus 34, verse 5, the reason I bring this up is because these are the people that are hearing this. These are the people at Mount Sinai that are actually hearing the narration that Moses is giving that we call Genesis. They are learning. Oh, they knew Abraham existed, but do you think they had it in their head, memorized all the things that Abraham went through, and they're about to go into the promised land and fight all these marauding people? No. They are learning, and they will continue to learn, and they will teach their children. This is what we should be doing. Now, in Exodus 34, while they were at Mount Sinai, Moses is in the mountain, and he is involved in writing the Ten Commandments. And I want you to notice what this verse says. And the Lord, he asked to see the Lord, and the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed before him and proclaimed the Lord God, merciful and gracious and long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children's children, unto the third and the fourth generation. Now that's basically what people do, is they read that like that, and then they say, wonder what God looked like. Now, let's do it this way. When God passed by, if you will notice this, when God passed by, he proclaimed. Do you hear this? The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord God. It's not about what he looked like. It is about what is said. We're talking about what God is like. We are not worried about what Moses saw. He proclaimed, the Lord God. Here he is, merciful. He is an individual who is merciful. He is gracious. He is long-suffering. He is abundant in goodness and truth. He is long-suffering again. I put that twice. That's what long-suffering is, going the second and third mile. Keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions of sins. That's what God looks like. That's what you need to realize. Now, this is an amazing piece of information that you are supposed to see. Do you know God? God doesn't want you to suffer. He doesn't want you to have hard times. He wants you to learn to be able to handle life's issues so that He can actually use you in ways that you never dreamed of to help other individuals. Stuff I'm going through right now, you know what I'm going to do with it? I'm going to actually use it to encourage someone else who's going through it later. There are people calling me all the time in the last 130 days saying, Johnny, how in the world do you do this? I've already been through this kind of stuff. My own son Micah should realize this is not bothering me. And the reason he doesn't realize it is because he doesn't pay attention. He does not know his own dad. This is how God is. Now notice this. Why is this so important? Because these are the attributes that are supposed to characterize us. Look how Paul takes that instance and talks about it in 2 Corinthians 3:16. Nevertheless, when it shall turn to the Lord, the veil shall be taken away. What's it? Well, in the context, he's talking about the hearts of the Jews. And their hearts actually are dull. Their hearts are hard. But if their hearts would turn to the Lord, the veil would be taken away. What does that mean? They would actually be able to see God through His Son, Jesus. And look at this, 2 Corinthians 3:18. But we all, that is those individuals that Paul is teaching, with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory. Look at this. Moses saw the glory of the Lord. What did he see? A shining light? What did it look like? Shimmer? Are you kidding? Do you really think that's what he saw? God proclaimed His glory. Moses did not see the glory of God in the sense that you need to even consider what it was that he saw. Here is what God said. He proclaimed Himself merciful, gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin. Why do you think so many people help me? It's because these are the things that characterize my life too. I am looking into the glass. I'm looking at Jesus, the eternal Son of God, and I am trying to imitate what is being proclaimed about Him. I try very hard to be an individual who is merciful. Everybody who knows me, and especially my family members, are saying, Dad, it is amazing the mercy that you have had for Micah over these years. Why am I talking about Micah? Because right now I'm having trouble with my son. And I have been merciful to him, and he knows I've been merciful to him. And there are people that are watching, they're saying, you're not being very merciful. Listen, the individuals that are out there meddling in my business, y'all are busybodies. You don't have anything yourself to do, and so you're spending all your time trying to undo me. Do you really think you're going to be able to undo us if we are actually magnifying the proclamation of the glory of God and we're trying to practice it? Why do I have so many friends? I'm saying so many friends that y'all don't know about. Individuals who will pay for a whole year of broadcast. Individuals who just obeyed the gospel after being 22 years as a Baptist preacher. Why is he praying for me and so friendly with me and come to the tent and demonstrate his existence so that it builds us up? Because he saw me be transparent on one of these shows. You see how this works? What was I being transparent about? I was being transparent about a time frame like Hagar was going through, despaired of life. And so when you try to magnify these things and you try to look in that mirror, which is Jesus Christ's Word, and you proclaim the glory of God in your life, merciful, gracious. There are people that would do anything for me. And this friend of mine that is actually telling me that he was trying to help me, with friends like that, I do not need enemies. I am telling you, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, and keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin. You know what, folks? I've had people like that guy that I'm telling you about actually call me up 5-10 years later and apologize. You know why? When you're pleasing to God, even your enemies are at peace with you. That's what I'm trying to get you to do. Thank you for being with me for this first hour. You'll see Caleb on our hermeneutics class that was done during the tent coming up next.